Friday, September 23rd, 2022, and this is the Washington Times front page. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. Former President Trump has suffered a bruising 2 days in courts this week, with legal setbacks and mounting lawsuits that increasingly threaten his political future. Jeff Murdoch reports his team's strategy of fighting to delay investigations flopped with judges in two different courts. Sandwiched between those two events was a civil lawsuit filed by New York Attorney General Letitia James against Trump, seeking $250 million in what she says are ill-gotten gains. She's also seeking to bar the former president from doing business in New York. Earlier this week, U.S. District Judge Raymond Dearie, the special master tasked with reviewing the materials the FBI seized from Trump's Mar-a-Lago home, mocked the former president's legal arguments. Dearie repeatedly demanded the attorneys back up their claims that Trump had declassified the highly sensitive materials found at his residence, accusing them of wanting to have their cake and eat it. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce says a nationwide spike in organized retail thefts has prompted nearly half of American small businesses to raise prices to offset losses. Sean Salai reports the business lobbying group said 56% of 750 small retailers responding to a survey were hit by shoplifters in the past year. 50% of those believe the problem worsened, and as a result, 46% of them raised prices. A chamber official said retail thefts cost businesses about $700,000 for every $1 billion in sales, a 50% increase over the past 5 years. The chamber has called on lawmakers to crack down on the online sale of stolen goods, increase criminal penalties, and prosecute shoplifters more vigorously. Federal prosecutors have closed out the final case against the men who killed Border Patrol agent Brian Terry in a shooting linked to the Fast and Furious gun scheme. Jesus Rosario Favela Astorga was sentenced to 50 years in prison after pleading guilty to murder. 3 other men on the scene near the southern U.S. border the night of December 14, 2010, got life sentences. A fourth, who was shot in the stomach by agents, is serving 30 years in prison, and 2 others connected to the group but not present that night got 8 and 27-year sentences respectively for their roles. 2 of the rifles the men carried that night were part of the Obama administration's Operation Fast and Furious, which was supposed to be a way to track illegal gun sales. Tests to track the bullet that killed Terry to one of those rifles were inconclusive. The operation was shut down in the wake of Terry's death. You can find all of these stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page. You can also find the entire lineup of news, commentary, and sports podcasts at the Washington Times at WashingtonTimes.com/podcasts. The Postal Service monitored protesters across the country, targeting issues involving guns and President Biden's election, according to records obtained by our Ryan Lovelace. Postal inspectors tracked the actions of gun rights activists gathering in Richmond, Virginia, people preparing to demonstrate against police in Louisville, Kentucky after an investigation into the police shooting of Breonna Taylor, and far-right groups headed to D.C. after President Biden's election. The records were originally obtained by the Cato Institute think tank. They cover the period from September 2020 through April 2021, including through covert social media surveillance called the Internet Covert Operations Program. And finally, one of America's most extensive collections of decommissioned tanks and other military vehicles got its start in 1982 when a Washington lobbyist turned history buff bought an Army Jeep. Military reporter Mike Glenn visited the collection, owned by Alan Coors, in Nokesville, Virginia, near Manassas, about 40 minutes west of Washington. Coors now owns at least 80 military vehicles, including a vintage M1917, the U.S.'s first mass-produced tank, and one of the few operational World War II-era M4 Sherman tanks. The farm is now the site of an annual Tank Day, where visitors can clamber over dozens of tanks and watch military reenactments. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Washington Times in any major podcast app. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.